Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is October 4th, and man, is the year just flying by. It is Tuesday, and we have another edition of the MSP Initiative Live. We'll do some quick housekeeping, and then you know the drill. We'll get into some good talk. MSPinitiative.com. This and every other session is under sessions in podcast and video format. Stay tuned for some giveaways from some of our collaborating sponsors. And we have our last community block party of the year. So November 9th, that's the date. Don't miss it. It's going to be our biggest party ever. Now, Icon Park on International Drive in Orlando. That's where they have the big Ferris wheel. We're bringing you a absolutely block party experience with a private concert by the All-American Rejects. That's right. You know their music. You probably think about it. It'll come to you, or you'll turn the radio on today and it'll just come on the radio. So even satellite, I've got it on satellite too. So join us in Orlando. If you're in town for the conferences, great. Come on down, 9 o'clock to 2 a.m. or until you can't drink no more, or you feel like going to sleep. We'll be kicking off the biggest block party we've ever done, and maybe you've ever been to. Lastly, we have 2 more Channel Strong tours. It's where we get on a band tour bus and go around America. So our last 2 are Vegas, Phoenix, San Diego, Irvine. It's in a couple weeks here, October 17th through the 20th. Then we have Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Orlando, and Atlanta to close out the year right at the tail end of November going into December. So hopefully things will dry out. We'll be into your neck of the woods, Florida and Georgia, and hopefully see some of you people out there networking, learning, having a few beers while you're at it, and maybe some sandwiches too. Usually they're pretty good. So that is all my housekeeping. We bring back my good friend and not a unfamiliar face to the show, Charlie Tomeo. How you doing today, Charlie?
Good. What's going on, George?
Hey, man, other than 45 degrees and raining here in Philadelphia, and my Eagles, 4-0, undefeated, last team in the league to go down, I'm doing well.
It's going to be interesting. It's amazing to see even the Jets and Giants are winning some games, which is...
Well, listen, like I told people before the season, I can name them, like we hadn't even played a game yet, not even preseason. And I said, when the schedule is real light, right? The NFC least, right? Bottom 4 schedules in the league in terms of strength of schedule, right? I reminisce back to a time where we had Donovan McNabb at the helm here in Philadelphia for the Eagles. And in 2004, Terrell Owens comes along and, easy schedule. And you find us in the Super Bowl against Tom and the Hood, right? And like all of a sudden, McNabb throws up on the field and they knew all of our signals and we lost the game. I still have trauma from it, but I did get a little bit of revenge in 2017, right? When I went on the track meet and took care of business.
That's it. You never know what it's going to bring, right? You got to keep everybody healthy and, just as long as the other teams aren't healthy, that helps you. That's for sure.
Yeah, listen, other than Arizona coming up this Sunday, I'm pretty much playing my own division. I'm not trying to say Dallas. I know Keith Nelson will pop on here at some point. There's still Dallas. I know Dak will eventually come back from the thumb, but hey, I'm excited. I got a pretty clear track. We'll see what happens. Love to host the NFC playoffs coming through Philadelphia.
Yeah, why not?
Hey,
you can host a bunch of people.
Yeah. By the way, if you're ever interested in coming down to a game, I'm happy to host you. No problem. Right. You just look at your schedule. You want to circle the Giants? It's fine. I'm happy to take it. Now, the only thing I'll tell you, if you look up my good friend Dave Scott, who came in from Minnesota for the Monday night home opener, the drill. Don't come in your gear, and we're good. Like, you won't get beat up. I won't have to have like security cover you or something.
No, we know how the Eagles fans work, right?
Yes, and like very much still the case, especially upstairs.
Yeah.
So anyway, Charlie, this is the heyday time of the year, right? Every possible event that could be an event is happening, good, bad, or indifferent. And I definitely saw, you were at Dado, right? So you we saw the chapter kind of close, right? All of the, finally got that last DadoCon off, and then now we're moving forward under the new story. But
There we
You know,
go.
it
IT
feels like,
Nation rolling in, and
I mean, it was a great event. I really, I mean, especially in DC, it's hard to pull off a lot of the times that size event, but they did a great job. Shout out to Steve, who, you know, has been that conference planner behind the scenes so many years. He did a great job over there, and love the ballpark party, by the way. It's the first time we pulled that off too. But industry seems to be shrinking a little bit, Charlie. I'm not gonna, you know, hard not to notice that. Seems to be less players on the board right now. I mean, there are some startup guys that are coming from the other side. It takes time, right? But as far as the stuff people know and use and rely on, it's starting to come down to a few options now.
Yeah, I think it's definitely getting challenging, and I think even for, you know, like you said, there's certainly a bunch of cybersecurity players out there. So there's new people that you're seeing, new tech. They have to build it out. My guess is that you know, just because of, you know, even not for the bad reasons, is these bigger guys are getting bigger. They're focused on, you know, making themselves successful and integrations and everything else. So I think it's going to be harder and harder if you're one of these newer guys getting like a proper integration to some of these RMMs or these PSA that I know in the past has really benefited, you know, me, you know, in being successful in the MSP space, right? You know, having, you know, kind of fitting into that single pane of glass was always like the dream. And, you know, I will proudly say we did, you know, we did it really well in my past, where we, you know, we focused on that, made it so that it was real easy for the partners. They're not bouncing around between portals. And so I guess that stuff is going to be, you know, probably harder and harder. You know, if, you know, unless, you know, just because it's going to be tough to get their focus on you.
I mean, all fairness, right? Like, for years, people are like, hey, I'd love less and less vendors because then I have less people to deal with.
Right.
And now we're kind of there, right? We're down to a handful that kind of have almost all of the products underneath of them. And like now all of a sudden, like the same people that said, hey, it'd be great vendor are flipping around to saying, really don't feel comfortable having all the eggs in the same basket. And quite frankly, are these individual line items underneath of that one vendor going to still get the same attention? Because they're concerned like it's just going to dry up, and you know, what you see is what you get. It's just interesting how quickly it went from left to right.
Yeah,
I don't think they're invalid concerns.
No, I don't. That's why you see, you know, Pax8's done a great job. They've been real successful with coming out and kind of being that alternative, at least if you didn't want to have, you know, all your third-party solutions going through one player. You know, I think the challenge that you know we have is that some of these bigger guys actually own all those third-party solutions. So it definitely gets more and more challenging. But you see, even, you know, we're seeing alternatives to some of the, you know, big names that almost kind of created the niche market because of that. You know, they may be doing it a little better, a little differently, but I think it's, you know, a lot of it is just that. So it'll be interesting to see how, you know, even some of the RMM PSAs that are out there, you know, you see some of the stuff that's going on, some of the smaller guys trying to get a name for themselves. They're getting pretty aggressive with going after the bigger guys and doing some crazy stuff. So it's always interesting to see.
You know, since you've been at a couple of stops along the way, and you know, you have these conversations at a wide level, like I understand price point at the end of the day is important, right? Like MSPs need to be profitable. If they're paying everybody else and there's nothing left for them at the end, then there's a problem. So I appreciate price is good. It's just, again, like, not to circle the obvious, but now all of a sudden when somebody comes to you and is like, hey, I'm going to give you a price for everything, choose what you want, right? And then like all of a sudden they have a good price, but now they're like, well, what, am I getting what I thought I was supposed to get? There's just this balance, right? I feel like And, Darren just popped on. He's been a big proponent of, hey, like I want to spread my risk across multiple vendors. And then that way I can kind of pick best of breed in these categories rather than just negotiate on price. And then, if it doesn't work for me, then I have a good price, but I'm not happy with the product. So there's like a whole business conversation here. Yeah. Technologies, we're talking about technology, right? And there's a lot to it, but like the business of technology, it comes down to a very, very hard balancing act. No?
Yeah, I agree with you. But I think for you, you come in, having your own MSP, you get it, right? Is there definitely is the economics behind decisions that you make, but you also know that cheap or better price on something doesn't always mean more money in your pocket, right? So if there's, a lot more issues with managing it, if it's any type of cloud-based service, if it's going down, if your techs are struggling learning it, if you've added another level of complexity, then I think most of the more evolved MSPs have kind of been through that and done that, right? So they're not going to really fall prey to that, especially if we're not as vendors iterating on those things. So like, you could buy the best thing in the world, and then we've all seen this. We could all name consumer brands that we loved, and then they just kind of went by the wayside, and then people moved away from them. I mean, most of the people on here probably we're on around the same age, right? Who used to go to Radio Shack or, buy Craftsman tools, right? I remember that my dad always bought Craftsman tools because, when he broke a shovel after 5 years, you go back and they give you a brand new one.
I wonder how many people actually knew that was the deal, but not that.
No, my dad knew it. I would always be like, "You really going to return that?" He's like, "Yeah, absolutely. It's a lifetime guarantee." I'm like, "Okay." But
if everybody who bought tools knew that Craftsman replaced the tools, man, that was a big part of it. However, one of the things that I thought was kind of an interesting thing is the reason why you buy Craftsman tool is because of the lifetime warranty. And the reason why you buy Snap-on tools is so you don't have to use the lifetime warranty.
Right. Yep.
Well, now I know. I'll make sure I only have Craftsman tools.
Exactly.
I wonder how. Like I think they made money off the lifetime warranty, because how many people rolled into customer service? And today I need a new screwdriver. I don't know. It's been a while, but
George, you don't use tools anyway. Come on, let's be real.
No, I do. I got them. Don't start. There's always a day where somebody has to go in last minute and fix a burning fire. So if that means I got to put my hands on tools, then I got to do what I got to do. You'd be surprised. I sometimes fix more than I break.
You know that somebody's got to replace the batteries in the remote.
That's the one.
Yep, I get it. He would be one of my clients where we do that for you. So I get it. Yeah, that's it.
I got you.
Or refill the Bevoit mug.
There you go. That's easy. Gotta pop the top. I have a cool little tool here for that. So big picture, Charlie, I'm seeing a lot of MSPs. Like I've lost count how many over the last, 60 days through all these events. I'm hearing people saying, we're just going to try and go do this on our own now. Like they've gone from, that used to be the thing back in the day. Now they like, hey, make it somebody else's problem. I got a lot of things to do. It's not worth it. There's liability there. And now we're hearing people trying to go back the other way saying, I'd rather just put some servers in a rack and load the software and off we go. And like, I was kind of surprised when I heard that, because they think that they can do it. Like the theme is control, right? We can fix it faster if we have control of everything down to the metal. And I'm like, you got to zoom out, right? Your time has cost to it. And like, there's also a liability thing there where like, if you're the whole thing and something does go wrong, double check your insurance policy to make sure that you're covered, I guess. But have you heard that? And what's your advice there?
Yeah, it's interesting to see, because if you look at as a whole, coming, through the, with everybody, going through the pandemic together, right? So nobody was spared, everybody locked down. I think that, we've seen more people, accelerate move to cloud, right? And people are doing it as consumers, they're doing it. You know, I like to use my example of my 86-year-old dad that didn't know how to buy anything online. All of a sudden has an Amazon account and he's able to, and, you know, I don't think he's going to go back, right? He's the guy that goes to the bank every week. I guess that's why they still have the calendars, right? So, but his life is completely changed with that. And I think that with a lot of what we're doing, you know, are even the people that we support, the end customers are accustomed to that, right? You know, it's hybrid work, right? Where, you know, I don't know, depending on the business, I certainly know on the vendor side, I don't know anybody that's saying, hey, we're going back into the office full time. So there's definitely that hybrid. In some cases, you know, a lot of people don't even come into the office at all. So I think it's, you know, I absolutely get and respect why somebody would think, you know, especially somebody that spent 20 years building something out, building something great. And if you look at most of the tools that are out there, the MSPs really built, right? Between scripts and just iteration after iteration and tweaking. And so, you know, they've built, you know, whether you like it or not, all these big tools you're talking about, George, you know, these guys on the line, these are the ones that built it over time. I remember talking to people that, you know, I won't mention names, but some of these RMMs where they had built 1,000 scripts. And so, you know, I could understand why they think that and what the frustration is. Because, you know, as you get bigger, as you get, you know, I guess less in touch, for, you know, so to speak, is, you know, I think, you know, MSPs just want to be heard. Like when they need something, they're not saying it because they, you know, it's, oh yeah, that'd be a nice thing to have, or they want a shiny button on something. It's because they know at the end of the day, they've done the math. It's going to save them time and money to do it. So I could see why some people would just be fed up altogether with it if they feel like they're not getting treated well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the best thing to work backwards from is how much is it going to take you to keep the wheel spinning, right? And do you have the support behind you to be able to fix these things? But at the end of the day, right, like whether it's your server or whether it's somebody else's server, you know, total cost of ownership, I guess, is the big theme there. And ultimately making sure people understand, you know, where the liabilities come, right? You know, obviously a lot of what you guys do over at Axcient and backup. I mean, if the backups aren't there and a cyber incident occurs, could be a
That's their
problem.
only job. I mean, I always say that there, you know, we kind of kid around a bit here, but that's our one job, right? All the other stuff is important. Don't get me wrong, but if you can't protect the data, then, you know, you're done, right? So I definitely, you know, hear what you're saying, and there is other complexities, right? Of building out that stack for yourself is, you know, right now, I think we're all in a position. I talk to MSPs, I talk to vendors, you know, hiring people is not the easiest thing in the world to do right now. And so obviously, you know, as you're building out your scope and from there, I mean, it's just, you need more people, you know, on call, you know, depending on what you're doing, right? If you have clients that, you know, they're looking for, you know, you know, basically 7-day a week uptime and SLAs built around that. And all those things get a lot more challenging.
Yeah.
For all of us.
It's you know, flipping directions for a little bit. It sounds like the Microsoft thing's about to get a little bit more complex. So on some of Microsoft's stack, right, 365, and there's Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive and all this stuff, seemingly sounds like Microsoft made an announcement not so long ago that they're going to start charging you for pulling data downwards from their cloud into whatever third party that you may be using. I forget how it was priced. I know it's variable, right? Because it depends how much data that you're moving around.
Right.
That's new, right? I think people, you know, may get a little bit of a shock bill when they, you know, their Microsoft invoice shows up and they see this line item. What are you hearing about it?
They have, I mean, they have some of that today, right? It's the egress fees and everything where they're, you know, there's definitely concern when anybody talks about that, right? When you're trying to back up Azure, back up M365 is, hey, what is that going to look like for me? For the most part, it's pretty nominal. You know, if on the vendor side, we're doing our job, right? So that it's not something that's big issue. But, the fact is that, I think we're in a Microsoft world, right? So I don't know how you get away from that, because the way that they're ultimately selling is, if you're a dentist office, if you want to go online, you could just kind of sign up and get a license for Microsoft 365 if you want. So, it just puts, I think, the MSP in a position where just building services and support around all that stuff is going to be important. And, if you are just making sure you're managing those costs, then you're able to pass those on.
I doubt the dentist that goes to sign up for Microsoft 365 just online, right? Office365.com, put the credit card in. I'm sure they have absolutely no clue that Microsoft's not backing that data.
No, they don't. But, you'd be surprised. I run into so many people in my personal life, and unfortunately, you ask the questions, right? Of, what are you doing? It's always interesting to me to find out. I went to the dentist office and I said to him, "Oh, are you PCI compliant?" And I know the guy for years. He goes, "Absolutely." I said, "So you mean to tell me that?" I said, "So your whole staff is, actually get certified every year?" It's like, "No, I do. I take it." I said, "Okay, so you're going to take my credit card when I go out of here?" And he's like, "No." It's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Why would I do that?" He's like, "That's what my staff does." I said, "Yeah, but you're not covered." And then, the one thing that's big on the East Coast, anybody, George, you'll get this, is the other thing is I have people that have built like businesses that are doing, $5+ million a year, and you ask them about their IT stack and what they're doing. And they said, "I have a guy." I'm like, "You have a guy?" And then, I find out this one guy, he wound up, he was backing up all his data to Dropbox because his guy told him that's what to do. So, oddly enough, he wound up getting ransom maybe 3 months after I told him he probably needed to move to an MSP, and he'd be more than happy to direct him to somebody, and really impacted his business.
Yeah. It's everybody thinks that they're on solid footing until they find out they're not. I was at Taylor Business Group's event in Fort Lauderdale, big, and they had TechRuck there, and he brought on his like contract and liabilities guru, and basically they're saying that the market for insurance services for MSPs is really dramatically shrinking by the week. And like, it almost feels like what's happening at the top end of our industry, right? It's going to end up being like 1 or 2 or 3 companies that'll do it. And then the rest of the people just won't go down that road. It's for some reason, this guy was indicating that like the underwriters and the insurance companies, I'm sure Keith will have a field day with this in a second, they just don't understand this business, right? And so they just, unless you specifically spell out every sentence, every period, every comma, they assume, hey, no, we don't do this. We don't cover this. We don't want to deal with this. And then all of a sudden, you're in a lurch. So it seems to be like a lot of the companies, who are backed by people like Lloyd's of London and all these other guys, right? Like it just keeps on shrinking to the point where, there's going to be a very niche industry that we're operating in here. And so it seems to be like almost like a specialty now to be able to either limit your liability, like negotiate with the insurance carrier on what's actually covered, or keep it to a point where you can still get it and afford it. Because the other thing that seems to be out there is that, hey, by the way, it's also going to become so damn expensive that you may not be able to find coverage in a couple of years. So I don't know. It seems like I don't know if that's a scare tactic or if that's just for real. It seems to be real, but I don't know.
I've seen stuff like this, even if you look at healthcare insurance. I remember first, starting out working for, small company, best insurance for a small company, a couple hundred people. It was about 15 years ago. And then at the end of the year, they got the bill and they basically said, "Hey, you cost us more than we were collecting because everybody goes to the doctor." So all of a sudden they dropped us. We had to get somebody else. Everything went up. What the employees paid went up. And so once they start looking at when they're losing money, it's not great. And, I will tell you, even this guy I'm talking about that got that ransom, he fortunately he called me up right away and he's like, hey, we talked, I met you. Is there any way you could help me out? And he happened to have cyber insurance. Oddly enough, his guy told him to get cyber insurance. So he got cyber insurance, and he didn't call him. He didn't call them. And, like 2 days into it, and I said, you have to call them. Like, these should be the first people to call, but they wound up paying out 30 grand. The bad guys basically came back and said, you didn't move quick enough. So he wanted another 30, and then they cut it. But he wound up, they looked at it and he dropped it. He felt like through the experience, he's like, I just don't feel like, it's something that we're going to change some internal things. We're going to take the money that we're spending on that and invest it in better technology. But, I think it's going to be more and more challenging as we go, because, we just went through it here, and it's pretty extensive. Like, it's not like it used to be where it's a couple of pages and you're just ticking a box. I think they're going to put themselves in a position where you'll see they'll deny more than they actually pay out.
Yeah. And like, to the point of what you just said, when they say if you get into a car accident, you have like, I don't know, 24 hours to report that. Like, if you don't report it timely, they may not even take the claim.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. So yeah, I mean, some of these topics just never go away. Another one that came out of that event in Fort Lauderdale was that a lot of people are coming back saying, hey, how do you handle when we're in a recession, by the way. It's now 2 quarters negative growth. I think nobody can argue this now. We're in recession. People like Darren out there like, hey, this is going to get worse. Agreed. Not even arguing that point. It's not worth arguing. But then, there was a conversation about, well, hey, if things are going downhill and we're kind of, battening down the hatches and like making sure we're getting lean as much as possible, how do you go back to your employees and say, hey guys, I don't think we can give you bonuses and increases, for the next 12 months because, we want to make sure we can still employ everyone given the market conditions. How does that conversation go for you? It's a hard one. I know.
Yeah.
It was a hard one when they brought it up.
Yeah. I mean, geez.
That's a common that's a common problem. We talked in key management classes 1,000 years ago, and I was at Transamerica, talk about aging myself, that people start equating overtime and bonuses as base salary.
Mm-hmm.
So you're now not cutting luxury, you're cutting mortgage payment and utility payment and so on. And that's one of the big problems with doing that.
I don't know if the message got out there, Keith, but let's see what you say about it, right? Everybody wants to get paid more, rightfully so. I get it. They want to get rewarded for their work. Some people work around the clock. Some people are 9 to 5. I get it. We all know the different personalities out there, but at the end of the day, right? Like, there is no guarantee of more, right? If anything, the guarantee is to hope that you can still get what you're supposed to get, right? And I know that it's commonplace to always want to grow and increase and do more and get rewarded more, but the market goes up and down, right? So, I've heard of companies who go to their entire staff and say, hey, listen, here are our options. We can all take a 10% cut and then try and fix this after we're past this period, or we're going to have to decide who stays and who goes in order to be financially sound going through this next little period. I don't know if that's the right or the wrong way. What are you hearing out there, Keith?
Well, I'm going to get myself in trouble. I'm negotiating with teachers right now and part of an oversight. And, they come up with, we work hard. And I said, you know what? And this is not politically correct, nor am I. The guy who served you fast food while you had school shutdowns was working hard. The guy who delivered your Amazon packages so you could stay inside was working hard. That's not good enough. Results. And you have to empower, it has to be a two-way street, right? You have to empower your employer to be able to make a profit to give you the money you're asking for. My point to teachers was, you're at a 30% efficiency rate, we should be asking you for pay cuts. You're failing. And so I relate the same thing to, it's a two-way street. You know, your employers don't have a money tree out back. You want to have stable employment. You want to have long-term employment and all the benefits and all the perks and all the bonuses. Help create that value. And I sometimes, and that we lose that. Everyone just goes, that guy over there makes more money. And you go, you kind of chose to sit in that desk, right? That's what you went to school to learn. That's the occupation you chose. If you weren't smart enough to study the salary ranges when you chose it, you're kind of, you know, putting yourself down. So I think the real differential factor is you got to provide value. You have to provide real value to where your boss says, you equate to this much extra money and I'm happy to give you part of it. Just existing doesn't create value.
Yeah, I think that's, you know,
I'm going to quote that, by the way. We're going to put that out.
I
You know,
completely
not only
agree
that,
with
but-
you, but
You're gonna get in
How
trouble
do you
with
get
more
rid of the
people.
dead wood? Because that's something that you see a lot of. There's a lot of the, for example, the teachers example. You know, you see a lot of those teachers, they did a phenomenal job. And then there were the other ones that were like,
They rolled in the TV and pressed play on the VCR or the DVD player every day.
You know what,
yeah,
though?
they sat there and they drank vodka in their coffee.
That was a choice they made when they decided to pay their dues and join a union. That you weren't going to get paid on value, you were going to get paid on seniority and classification. I mean, I deal with the longshoremen. I hear union all the time, and the guy says, I do more, you know, I sway the crane twice as much as the guy sitting next to me. Sorry, that was a choice you made when you went into a union and decided to do collective bargaining.
Go
And
ahead,
if you're,
Charlie.
all right,
That's it. We're
all right,
gonna
George,
outlaw the unions.
we're getting into some hot topics. So before we get canceled, I would just say that it's you know, the environment's completely changed. So I don't necessarily that I disagree with, you know, Keith or Brent, where, you know, it used to be you had to show value, but we've also, as employees, changed the game as well. You know, how many times last year we had people on the hook, accepted a job coming over, and they're like, yeah, I just got a 40% increase to stay. I will tell you, over all the years that I'm doing this, over 20 years, I would say that person will leave. So that increase was temporary, because the one thing that, I've never really been a fan of is if somebody's leaving and you want to keep them, if it's all about money, you just need to let them go.
I couldn't agree more.
Because
I
Hope
agree
your
too.
relationship was better that they came to you beforehand and say, you know, my kid's going to private, whatever, you know, that's all important stuff. And you had a discussion before they come in, and to quote two of my favorite people in the world, Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan, I don't negotiate with terrorists and just say no. And that would be my answer. And I've done it before. There was a story where I had a client who decided to bike one of my techs, and she called and said, I'm really upset with you. And I said, me? You stole my tech. And she goes, I ended up having to pay him another $20,000 more because of counter offers you kept making. And I said, you're a special kind of stupid. I never made him another offer. He came in and said, you offered him more money. And I said, you went behind my back. I can no longer trust you. Good luck. And I said, so if he went back and forth and told you we were negotiating, you're dumber than the person that was just stealing employees.
Wow. Talk about you're bidding against yourself.
Yeah.
yeah, and usually it's for most people that you want to keep, there's more to it than just the money. And if you could get to that root and fix that problem, then that's a different conversation. But I've recovered, I'd say more than my fair share of people without giving them any more money.
Charles, what is that thing that you find is the compelling thing that employees, what is it that's important to them? Some root concept,
Yeah, it's interesting because the couple times that the ones that really wound up sticking and stayed around and were successful and ultimately got the money, right? It was really about understanding what what their career looked like. The one thing I always think is interesting is, and we do this a lot on the vendor side, where it's almost like that next in line, right? It's like the military, right? The guy with the nice hat gets shot, it's the next guy in line takes over, right? That's kind of similar to what I've seen in the vendor world a lot, which is the next person in line gets promoted. But really understanding like what they want to do, what they see as opportunities for them, and then ultimately just listening to them to understand like the challenges that they're going through. And so if you could solve those challenges or at least put them on a path to get those things solved. I've had more people say to me, I feel like, my manager doesn't listen to me. I don't know what, I'm not really sure even what I'm supposed to be doing. And I guess, Brent, it's all about like putting them in a position to be successful. And successful is not always money.
I'm not sure who asked that question, but there's studies that were done years ago, and they're key management. It's an institution. It's key man. And it was funny because they listed what employees thought was important, what they wanted for their employer, and what employers thought their employees wanted, and they didn't match up. Employers put money way above where employees did. Employees' money was in the lower 10, under the 50% tile. What was high on employees' list was the ability to complete their mission and have value. Everyone in the world wants to think that they weren't wasting oxygen for the day. They really do. Yeah. And they want to know that they're accomplishing something and they're making a difference. And so that was much higher than money, and employers were just throwing money, and you're almost begging them to make it a bidding game.
Yeah, somewhat of a sense of personal adulation or something like that,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you call people out, we even do kind of, like an employee of the month type of thing where you're calling people out when you're recognizing when they do something that's above and beyond. The other thing is if they figured out, they figured out how to solve a problem a different way. So making sure that they know that if they could just come up to you, Brent, anytime, doesn't matter what your role is, they could talk to you, they could ask you something. That kind of open door policy has always really worked well for me, is just, doing that. And then I'm the random guy, as the old guy in the group, is I'll just pick up the phone and call you. And they're almost like stunned, that, I still to this day, and I've had bigger teams, somebody new comes on board, I call and introduce myself because I'm just a part of the team. I'm not, I just have a different role, but understanding that it's one team is always been a bigger thing as well. So I feel like that you actually amount to something here.
So this one's a sticky topic, but yeah, we're in that time, right, where everybody needs to pay attention. I did see finally caught up to the Redditors of the world, and we know that, I kind of call that the back alley of the internet, good or bad. But they popped up and they, somebody had posted there, is anybody else starting to see things slow down? And he was saying that his deals were taking longer to close. His new prospect appointment volume has gone down. And we've talked about it here multiple times, but my reply to that was start looking at companies who are going to be cutting their internal IT departments down. Like those are the people that they can't get rid of technology. Their technology is only going to get more intensive, but if they have less people doing it, they're going to need help. So that was my advice. Looked like a lot of people agreed with me. I think I had like dozens of people hitting the yes vote, upvote thing, but you almost need the position now, like where people were, the people that were properly positioned back during the pandemic, they just didn't realize it was coming and they were just in the right place, right time, and kind of swept up. I think you're in that time again, but this time you can be better prepared for it.
You're people better than me that go on Reddit. It's like
I know.
I believe in self-talk. I believe in you know, I think I'm going like, you guys are creating grief that I don't think is really there. I think that all market cycles bring opportunity as long as you're providing, you know, the value. Again, I overuse that word, but the measurable value to your clients. When markets are growing, you provide the ability for them to grow and increase capacity. When things are compressed and we go through corrections or recessions, whatever you're supposed to call it these days, you provide greater efficiency in their business and allow them to maintain the staff. Because the hardest thing is, you know, the guys that jumped around for more money are probably the first guys unemployed if there's a real slowdown.
I agree.
And for smaller companies, that terminating and then rehiring is really costly, very costly. So, you know, they really want to make every effort to keep their core competency people around. And I think your advice is right, George. You know, keep your sales guy, keep your guys that make your widget, keep your guy that knows your business, and then take something that's a little more market generic IT and those, you know, bundle those out, and then hopefully you'll never lose that relationship because you provided that value during that time.
Yeah, that's a big thing, is just knowing who you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Right. I know with, you know, some of the partnerships, distributors, RMM stuff that I've worked with over time is just finding out, you know, if we were leveraging salespeople, is, you know, what do they do? Like, what drives them? How do you help them? I think so for even for your employees, if you could help somebody out that's got, you know, just had, you know, another kid, they got 3 kids under the age of 4, you know, do you flip them, here, take your wife out for dinner, you know, we'll pay for the babysitter. If that's like your key employee, that's going to be more to them than almost anything else, is the fact that you know enough about them, that you care. So that's the big thing, is I always try to take the time to get to know people that are on the team.
Yeah, I sure believe that too.
And George, we have Kevin Shanahan on here. He's a friend of mine, big Giants fan. So he will definitely be heading down to
Giants at Philadelphia. You interested?
Thanks for the invite, Charlie.
Yeah.
Turning out to be the best division in sports with America's only team.
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for Keith Nelson to pop in there. Well, here's the big question. I mean, Dak looks like they might try and bring him back early. I mean, your backup looks like he's doing a good job.
You know, it's funny you say that, because you know, my son Ryan, I don't know if you met him. When you're down here, I'll bring him down to, you know, he's my special needs son that was goalie for Team USA. He probably knows more about the Cowboys than I forgot. And he says, as of today, they're now saying it's a little more swollen. There's no need to rush. And I think that, now, if I was Dak, I mean, I'd be going like, shit, I got to get back on the field, because this guy, you know, Dak got his job because Romo was hurt, right?
That's right.
And then what is it? It goes down the Romo got his job because Bledsoe, or, you know, down the, and you had the same thing in Philadelphia, right? You had, here's my guy.
But we're a quarterback factory, remember?
Yeah. But it was the same thing, right? Here's the guy, we're settled on it, and then he gets hurt, and you go, wait a minute, we chose the wrong guy. And then, you know, that's just, and so what I think about Cooper Rush is he forces our immature offensive coordinator to play the game we're supposed to play and not be so Tom ass turtle football. And, you know, we're just a good basic team. Play a solid defense, ball control, don't do anything stupid, because we're not great enough to make up for mistakes yet.
Okay. I just want to remind you, and I make wagers every year with people, just friendly wagers. And I don't even bet like the line, just outright, you know, wins, losses. And, you know, those Cowboys fans that came back, they're like, oh, we're going to sweep the Eagles this year. I said, okay, I lost last year. I came back this year to recoup. Okay. I don't think that's going to happen.
No, you know what? The one thing is, just as any other team, this isn't picking on the Eagles, you're 1 or 2 injuries away from being where you're at. And that's the biggest thing, I think, in the NFL that has made things, or your Rodgers on the decline and you're not the Packers anymore. I think that's,
Yeah, don't you wish you could do the same thing within your own businesses? I mean, unfortunately we don't have the 53-man roster and can't afford to have 3 tight ends and 10 offensive linemen and 6 wide receivers. Like, it would be nice, right? Bigger companies have these luxuries, right? Because, like, one person doesn't hopefully make or break the thing. But man, in small business land, it's completely the opposite.
yeah.
And there is no draft either, right? Like, the draft is like the local college's co-op program, I think. But then again, you're always on a disadvantage, because when Microsoft comes in and offers internships or externships, or whatever you want to call them, paid internships, you're on the bottom of that rung to go get people.
Funny you bring that up. We just did a call yesterday with the built for the community colleges in California, and California is funding internships for small businesses to help them get the interns from the communities. We have a big cybersecurity. And the other thing I thought was really good is you now can send your staff for specific training at the community college, and you get reimbursed for their hourly rate while they're there and the cost of tuition.
Wow. Look at that.
That's pretty progressive.
That is progressive.
Yeah.
I don't know who's paying for that, but it sounds like a
who's
good
paying
plan.
for that?
All the rich people in California,
All right.
the
All that
Darren,
extra gas tax, right? Because it's like $7 a
shit.
gallon. Like, that
Tell me
goes.
where I apply.
Yeah. Does that work for the owner too? Can they go take courses and get reimbursed?
that'd be interesting if it did. You didn't ask that. Yeah.
As
See
long as
that?
you're a W-2
Send that back
employee,
to the
what the
committee.
heck? What difference does it make?
Yeah, I don't think it makes a difference, right?
Well, it came up because it's really focused on cybersecurity, which goes back to something you were talking about when I first got on the call. Is there's all this motivate, let's make everything secure, let's make all these regulations. You go, let's be honest, we really don't have the workforce to do all the stuff that's being asked. The insurance companies don't have the trained underwriters or the actuaries. We don't have a lot of MSPs specialized. And regulations are changing all the time. And so you're going like, this is a pipe dream legislatively, unless we train a workforce to the new requirements.
Yeah, it's almost got to be the old days, like we had the BOCES over there, or the vocational school, where you're training these techs out, and you're aligning them to the small businesses, right? So, because like you said,
and maybe
Gord,
co-opting it. I don't think a small business can afford to hire the right guy.
Yeah.
The guy, because you know what, customers don't realize the guy who knows cybersecurity is not going to fix your printers and make sure you can format cells in Excel.
I actually think this is a bigger point than you're making, Keith, right? Like, everybody out here that's been doing managed services, outsource IT, I don't care, whatever marketing term, IT consulting. Like, we've been working on a bunch of different things. Like, if that's a blinking light, you pretty much you're, kind of on you.
Yeah.
And like, to your point, the person that, is specialized in cybersecurity, like, they don't even, like, coming back to the MSP trying to like be security focused, the people that you have on staff, right? They can't be good at 40 things, right? So to expect that your internal people will be able to get up to snuff on the cyber side and still do everything else, I think it's just one hair too many on the camel's back. I just, like, effectively the MSPs that seem to be doing well here have literally dedicated people who just work on that side, or they're working with an outside partner who's doing a lot of that for them, and then any remediation work get kind of kicked back. But I just don't think you can do both.
No, it'd be very difficult. And it's even a focal point, right? You're watching logs, you're looking at trends, and someone calls you, and you have to be, besides being technical, I have to be kind of sales and customer service and all that if you call me with the problem, especially if you're the CEO of a company. I can't make George, who writes the check and signs the check, feel like I'm rushing him through because I'm busy with something else. His inability to print or his missing email or something has to become my highest priority. And that's difficult to shift.
I agree. And I think that, I saw there's a podcast, I think it was Dave Sobel last week. He's like, there's a guy in California, I forget the guy's name, I have to go dig it up. Instead of calling himself a managed services provider, he just stayed as an IT consultant. Did a little bit of what Electric did, right? Concentrated on automation of SaaS, okay? But then was only billing still in 15-minute increments for labor. And he grew a $35 million business.
Wow.
No outside vendor or venture or PE or investor, just grow as you grow, one at a time, and literally never kind of adopted the bundling managed services model, stayed as, what he called an IT consultant. And, now they're big. He said they didn't even hire a finance person until 30 million.
Wow.
There's a lot of ways to get where you want to go, right? Unfortunately, and I know, Keith, you always bring it up, blue light, Kmart special, although Kmart's out of business now, so I guess it's Walmart. But, I guess the problem is that if you aren't, offering what people expect as a specialty service, right? Like, you're not really trying to I guess you could do the legal Zoom if you wanted to commoditize your attorney, but when you're in the middle of a problem, I need to talk to somebody, right? I'm not just gonna, hope that this template is gonna do, save me, right? So there's something to be said for how the business of technology, again, like how you run your business on a day-to-day, how you market yourself, and how you structure things with your end customer could be the difference between $1, $2, $3 million guy and apparently $35 million guy.
Yeah, it is. It's all perception. And if you don't know anything about it, then all you're going to do is go by, some fancy words, some pitch, the way you position it. It's not always the reality. And, I think we all know, in anybody that's been in IT, that if everything is going well, most people don't even know if you're doing anything. Right. And then the one time, it doesn't go well, it's like you broke something. It's something you did as the IT guy. So it's in a lot of cases, a thankless job. And that's why I think, ultimately, whether you're in, an MSP, I worked in, IT for Merrill Lynch for a number of years where, you'd have to kind of show them what you were doing. And that's why I like making sure that, I see a lot of MSPs. I don't know how, Keith, you're doing it, or Brent, like, are you doing, business reviews with your key end customers to, kind of show them some of the things that you've done, potentially what attacks that you're preventing, and, how do you showcase that, they are actually getting the value?
Come from behind the curtain. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the problems as we get better with script. You read MSPs talking about RMMs, right? And they want RMMs to do everything. And they're talking about, we want a script, and you go, wait, what's really good? Calling up someone and just say, I just saw something on your computer, and let me look at it with you. Because while QBRs, I'm not diluting the value of them, are great, not to review, I think we can have a whole different discussion on that.
Yeah.
But often it's the squeaky wheels at the bottom that force the top to make a choice. And I think we have to remember all those rank and file people that make that business run are instrumentalists to us staying there, right? And so I think at times even you go, I could script this fix, but let me talk to you on the phone and you could watch me do something, as more of a sales versus technical approach. And by the way, at the same time, it's how's things going, and you may find out something they're doing that you should jump onto.
I think remember when you said that hey, when employers and what they think is important to employees, and the employees what they kind of feel like it's a parallel to what's actually happening in IT land, right? Because the MSPs usually a pretty technical group, right? They're not maybe great at the relationship personality off the cuff conversation. And I think when it's all said and done, and this is my opinion, I don't know if you agree, the hardest part of the IT business is people, not just the people you're working with. I'm talking about the customer on the other side. I mean, that's probably the hardest part of it all, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And it's where we make up, that's why I get overly offended when MSPs do this, my customer's stupid, because I do believe I go, that should be prohibitive culture in you should say, we don't talk like that.
Yeah.
Our customer knows something we don't know. I deal with longshoremen. They know how to operate a crane. I don't understand that. Just because I understand computers gives me no greater value. I'm going like, I can fix their dispatch system, but I sure as crap can't unload a ship. So I think that a multiple respect, and you're going, by the way, if my customer knew everything I did, they wouldn't pay me a lot to write dispatch systems to dispatch longshoremen to the port or track containers in the country, because they'd have figured it out themselves for a lot less money. So that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
100%
Yeah, that's
agree.
right. I mean, that's the one thing that I've had to do over the years as, about 10 years ago, we flipped to focusing on MSPs. Was we had to retrain everybody from the CEO down on, how you guys do business, what's important to you. I dragged people out to the different conferences so they could meet MSPs, because nobody got it. We still had support people that would look at a ticket and say, oh, well, it's, it looks like that they're only, doing a, $100 MRR a month. They're not that big of a customer. And yet, they were actually coming through ConnectWise, which was 4 million endpoints. So, or, how many people are so connected within the industry? Like, I used to say to them, like, everyone gets treated like we had gotten rid of in the past, the whole tiers, right? You look at, for an MSP, Microsoft tiers for partnering really don't make sense for anybody, because, unless you guys have this, unbelievably large business, you're never going to be actually ranked up there for something that they're going to care about. So we would just say, everybody's important. Just view everybody as the same, because they all talk to one another. So just treat them as the same customer. And that's, I think, part of that communication skills. We had to tell people, pick up the phone. You're going to email 10 times back and forth on a minor issue that you could just talk to them, make sure it's clear what they need, and get them the help that they need.
It maybe establish a relationship.
Yeah. The other thing I think is interesting, Keith, is that, you look at a lot of these things, and I'm sure you guys deal with them all the time, right? Is, how do we rate a ticket, right? Is it a critical ticket? Is it, but if you're getting a call from your largest end customer, right, that's, let's say, worth 40% of your business, and it is a minor thing, potentially, it's still critical.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you going in the queue and now going into the SLA of, hey, we're, if it's a low end ticket, we could solve it in 48 hours. That doesn't help you.
I like to use slogans. I tell my people, we're not making wine. We don't need to age our tickets to make them better.
That's another good one. You had a few good one-liners today there, Keith.
And so I think it's like, be sensitive, and the fact is, you don't really understand the guy. Someone's sitting there having to do something simple, but he could have that could be backstacking a lot of work that isn't apparent to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, I was going to do this one, and I was going to do a bunch of others, but because this one never got done, I never brought the rest. Right? I mean,
and then the impact. You have to remember the impact to your customer's business. An average employee who can't do their job doesn't sit there and twiddle their thumbs. They lean over and disturb 2 or 3 people around them. And so you're going like, the disruption factor is huge. And so you're not getting paid to fix computer stuff, because our life is pretty boring. We're getting paid to help our customers serve their customers. That's what we're getting paid for. And I think we have to remember that.
Keith, don't make sure to invite some people for that stop over there in
I will.
California. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Looks
With
like,
cigars and a convertible late.
oh yeah, we need to see the new ride because only the employees can drive the Teslas. We need something different. Inside joke still. October, what is that? 20th, Charlie has behind him.
Yeah.
Looks like you guys are doing an online event called MSP Experience. I know you've been doing this for a few years. So
Yeah, it's good. It's a lot of thought leadership stuff. Definitely would have, encourage everybody to join. We have some vendors. We'll do a vendor panel. We got some MSPs actually coming on to share, some of their insights of how their business is working. And then we have Larry Walsh on, who I think everybody knows. He's been around, maybe not as long as you, Keith. It sounds like 1,000 years, maybe a bit much, but close enough.
So head over to Axcient.com, see if you can sign up for that. Tune in the background while you're, fixing whatever. For everyone else, thanks for joining. I know we bring Charlie on every so often. I know Charlie's going to definitely be on the road. I know
Yep.
I'm definitely going to see him in Orlando on November
Yep.
9th. So
Yep,
make sure everybody gets down for that because that block party is going to be crazy. For everyone else, this session was recorded. It was a pretty deep session, by the way. I liked it. I think this is the kind of stuff that really moves the needle for everyone because it kind of gets you thinking on what you do in your situation. But this session will be online in a little bit under mspinitiative.com under sessions. And if you want to reach out to Charlie and talk about anything that he does over there at Axcient, backup, SaaS, backup, on-prem, BDR. I mean, they got a bunch of cool stuff over there, file sync and share. I mean, their stuff's actually been, pretty solid. So hit him up online. You can find him.
Thanks,
All right,
folks.
guys.
All right,
Appreciate
thanks.
Hey,
you.
George. Go Giants.
Thanks, man.
Go Eagles.
Cowboys, America.